We're here at the Greatest Generation exhibit at the Minnesota History Center. We're talking to some great civic leaders about democracy and citizenship and how it all works together. We're talking about leadership, Nate. I had a class called Personal Citizenship in junior high, and some people thought it was an etiquette class. And in a way, it is polite because people don't let leaders lead without input, right?
True. Yeah.
And there is a role for leadership, even though we all want to be kind of in charge of the game now. There's a role for leaders now.
Well, and that's one of the interesting things of the technological wave that we've just undergone. When you look at this generation, this greatest generation in this exhibit, they came out of a world that was very command and control. The stories were very controlled. I mean, Americans didn't even know that their president was in a wheelchair. Can you imagine that today? But the story is everywhere now. Over the last 10, 15 years, I've heard a lot of voices about like leadership is gone, it's all smart mobs and all this kind of stuff. It would be Wikipedia. That is incredible and incredible opportunities with that, but I don't think it gets rid of the need for leadership. What it does is it changes the nature of leadership. It used to be command and control. I think when you see the most effective modern leaders today, they're the folks that are doing the best job of listening. And what we want to listen to and what the Civic Summit is all about is that a better world isn't going to happen by accident. It's going to happen through intent. And it is about civics, but it's also, to your point, it's about civility. We need to learn how to disagree and not be disagreeable at the same time. That's a voice that can come out of this summit.
If we were going back to 8th grade, I can imagine a test of sort of who's the civic leader, and it's A, B, C, or D. And the answer at that time might, in many ways, have been the positional leader. And now the situation, the answer is all the above. And the opportunity we have with technology and with the changes in the economy is that everybody has an ability to be a leader wherever they are. It doesn't diminish the critical importance of positional leaders, elected officials, and those people in the community, but that we literally have the chance for everybody, wherever they are in an organization, wherever they work, their community, their congregation, there is a chance to see themselves as civic leaders and then to develop the skills that they can use to express that. Because I think the first challenge is that realization to say, hey, I can be a civic leader. Once that's in place, you need the skills and the tools and the relationships to make that happen.
I think Sean's point is very well taken. It's incredibly important as we think about the new technology and opportunities that we really are thinking about the skill development around these ideas. And in conjunction with the skill development, there's also huge issues around access. There are still huge challenges around broadband access, around getting access to rural communities, in urban communities. We still have entire segments of the population that, as we change the model of public discourse, are being left out of that discourse. And so we have a huge responsibility to make sure that as much as we are talking about what's greatest good for all, that we continue to act in a way that embraces and pulls in all voices, and really thinking about how do we talk about a skill set in a community that's a little more different, that is still feet on the ground, knocking on the door, which can never be abandoned in light of these new tools.
I think we can't underplay the role in leadership of inspiration.
Yeah.
I remember being in the World War II Museum in London and hearing some of the speeches that Winston Churchill gave, and the power of inspiration in leaders, I think, is not to be in any way diminished. That, however, does not diminish the role of those who have a role to play. Leadership plays out at all levels. It's not just the president or the director who's the leader. There are inspirational messages, to be sure, but leadership happens at all levels in a society.
Yeah, what's interesting, Nate's earlier comment about the intention, the Iranian Revolution, we're into talking about Iran right now, but the original revolution many years ago came about because cassette tapes from religious leaders, mostly based in Europe and other parts, were smuggled in, and people listened and were inspired by cassette tapes to then create a revolution that had to confront U.S. support of their old regime and all these sorts of things. So, the intention question becomes part of the issue around leadership. And so as we are examining leadership that inspires, then we have to be asking those questions. The new technology really lends itself to questioning, and not for the purposes of just tearing down or to be negative, but from the point of view of saying, can a collective vision on something carefully managed and carefully interacted, can it give us a better idea, and can that idea then be the subject of that inspiration? So when we began sort of constructing this National Civic Summit, the concept was to bring together as many strands of that thing, all things civic, so to speak. People working on character, good character development for good citizenship, civic education, service learning, voter registration, voter education, people who are also engaged in community leadership around the culture of democracy. All of those things are part of that broader thing that then help us out of many to create one. I think the National Civic Summit is going to give us that opportunity to hear, to see how this fits together, to examine where we go, to appreciate the civic culture that we've inherited, the civic institutions, and to say, okay, now where do we go going forward? We're in an economic crisis, we need to tackle that, but we have opportunities abound. What will we do to create the next of the greatest generations?
Right, we've heard the old term, the world is run by those who show up. Now people are finding a lot of ways to show up.
Absolutely. But it's always about a story. A leadership story is always about that aspiration and inspiration. And if you look around this, this Greatest Generation exhibit, it was about moving forward. It wasn't about moving left. It wasn't about moving right. It was about moving forward. We have an opportunity with the Civic Summit to create leadership culture. We're not looking for a leader or a small group of leaders. We're actually looking for the leadership in all of us.